Life lessons from the elderly. What would it mean if the way you've been having seethal your whole life is actually the reason you lost intimacy in old age? Let me tell you about Harold. He was 72, kind, retired, and recently divorced. He met someone special and tried to be intimate again after years of silence, but his body didn't cooperate. He panicked. She pulled away, and he never tried again. Not because he, advice for the elderly, didn't want to, because he thought he was broken. I'm Dr. James, a urologist and men's health specialist. For over 30 years, I've helped thousands of men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond reclaim their confidence, restore intimacy, and protect their health in ways they never thought possible. Most men believe their seethal life naturally ends with age, but the truth, it doesn't. What's really holding them back is what they were never taught. Today, I'm going to reveal 5 powerful seethal secrets that older men wish they had known earlier, and the real price they paid for not knowing. Before we continue, if you find this kind of honest, life-changing health advice helpful, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss another message made just for men like you. And if this speaks to you, type 1 in the comments to let me know you're here. If not, type 0. I truly want to improve and serve you better. Now let's begin with the first truth, because this is the one that quietly breaks more hearts and confidence than any other. The myth that intimacy after 60 should still be spontaneous. Secret 1, you can't rely on spontaneity anymore. And that's not a secret one weakness, it's wisdom. When you were younger, intimacy could happen anywhere, anytime. You didn't need to think twice, your desire matched your ability and everything just worked. There was a certain pride in being ready on demand and not needing to talk or plan or prepare. For most men, that spontaneity was part of what made intimacy exciting. But here's the truth. No one tells you. After 60, the rules change, and clinging to the belief that you should still be able to perform whenever the moment is right is not only unrealistic, it's dangerous. I've seen it time and time again. Men who walk into my office with their heads down, avoiding eye contact. They're not sick, they're not injured, but they're crushed emotionally, psychologically because of one failed moment behind closed doors. They tried to be intimate with their partner, but their body didn't cooperate. And instead of understanding what happened, they blamed themselves. They felt weak, embarrassed, ashamed. Some avoided seethal altogether after that. Others pretended it never happened and quietly suffered. But most never asked for help. One man I'll never forget was named Gerald. He was 69, healthy, still active, and had recently started seeing someone after years of being alone. Things were going well until one night when the intimacy turned physical. He hadn't prepared. He thought everything would just come naturally, like it always had, but when it didn't, when his body failed him, he panicked. He pulled away, made an excuse, and never called her again, not because he didn't care, but because he was humiliated. He told me later, "It felt like I lost a part of my manhood that night." This is the price many older men pay when they don't understand the reality of aging and intimacy. It's not just a disappointing night, it's a blow to your identity, your confidence, your emotional well-being, and for some men, it becomes the beginning of isolation. They stop trying. They pull away from their partners. They lose connection, not just physically, but emotionally. And as that emotional distance grows, so does the loneliness, the resentment, and the belief that maybe their best years are behind them. But here's the truth I need you to hear. Losing spontaneity is not the same as losing intimacy. What worked at 30 was built on biology. What works at 60, 70, or 80 must be built on intention, communication, and preparation. That's not weakness, that's wisdom, it's maturity. And in many ways, it creates a deeper, more meaningful kind of connection. Planning for intimacy doesn't kill the magic. It protects it. It tells your body, your partner, and your heart that this matters. It gives you time to support your blood flow, reduce stress, avoid medications that interfere, and create the right emotional environment. More importantly, it takes the pressure off. When you stop expecting your body to rise to the occasion like it once did, you begin to find peace and pleasure in the process. Not just the performance, but ignoring this truth comes with serious risks. I'm not just talking about emotional disappointment, but I'm talking about men who have suffered heart attacks, strokes, or sudden drops in blood pressure because they tried to push their bodies too hard, too fast without preparation. Intimacy, like any physical activity, demands respect. If you ignore that, if you treat Seethal after 60 like Seethal in your 20s, you may be gambling with more than just your ego. You could be gambling with your life. I've counselled widows who lost their husbands during intimacy because the men were too proud to admit they needed to slow down. I've spoken to men who ended up in the ER because they mixed blood pressure meds with enhancement pills without asking a doctor. I've seen too many men pay the ultimate price because no one warned them that aging changes the game, and you must play it differently. But the good news is this. Once you understand that intimacy in later life requires a different approach, everything begins to shift, communication deepens, anxiety disappears, satisfaction returns, and most importantly, you reclaim your role. Not as the man you were at 30, but as the wiser, more grounded man you are now. So if you've been feeling disconnected, frustrated, or ashamed, know this. It's not the end. It's a new beginning. If you're willing to let go of outdated expectations and embrace a smarter, safer, more powerful approach to intimacy. Now that brings us to something even more urgent. Because while most men focus on what's happening in the bedroom, they're ignoring what their performance is trying to tell them about their heart. And if you miss that signal, it could cost you everything. Secret erections are a window into your heart. Secret to health. Let me be honest with you. If you're over 60 and you've noticed changes in your ability to get or maintain an erection, you should be concerned. Not just because of what it means for your Seethal life, but because of what it could mean for your heart. Too many men see erectile dysfunction as just a bedroom issue, an embarrassing inconvenience, something to joke about or quietly ignore. But what they don't know, what they were never told, is that a man's erection is more than just a Seethal response. It's a cardiovascular event, one of the most sensitive indicators of blood flow in the entire body. And when that blood flow slows down, something much deeper is going wrong. I remember one patient. David, he was 67, married, still working, part-time, staying active. He came to see me because he was having trouble in the bedroom. Nothing major, just not quite the same as before. Probably just age, right, doc? He said with a laugh. But I didn't laugh. I asked him questions, ran a few tests, and something didn't sit right. I ordered a full cardiac workup 3 weeks later. David was in surgery for a 90% blockage in his left anterior, descending artery, the one they call the widowmaker. That night, he called me from his hospital bed. He said, I came in thinking I had a Seethal problem. Turns out I had a time bomb in my chest. What most men don't realize is that the arteries in the penis are smaller than the ones in the heart. That means they'll clog or narrow faster. If blood can't flow down there, it's a red flag that your bigger arteries, especially the ones feeding your heart and brain, may already be compromised. Erectile dysfunction is often the very first sign of cardiovascular disease. It's your body's quiet way of begging for help. The cost of ignoring that signal is deadly. I've seen men brush it off, buy over-the-counter pills, or blame it on stress or age. Meanwhile, they're walking around with dangerously high blood pressure, clogged arteries, or undiagnosed diabetes. They don't notice until it's too late. until a stroke paralyzes them, until a heart attack hits during sleep, until the damage is permanent. And it doesn't just stop with physical danger. The emotional toll is just as devastating. When a man feels like he's losing control of his body, it chips away at his confidence, his self-image, even his will to connect. He may withdraw from his partner. He may stop pursuing intimacy out of fear. And slowly, he may start to feel invisible, like his best years have passed him by. But here's the truth. It doesn't have to be that way. You have more control than you think. If you treat your erection like a signal instead of a shame, you can catch problems early. You can make changes, powerful changes, that not only improve your see-through life, but extend your life. A weak direction may be your body's way of whispering, I need help. The tragedy is, so many men wait until that whisper becomes a scream. That's why I urge every man I treat, if something changes in your ability to perform, don't hide it, don't ignore it. Don't be embarrassed, be smart, be proactive. Get your heart checked, run the tests, have the conversation, because one awkward doctor visit today could mean 10 more healthy years with your spouse, your family, and your life. This is not about shame, it's about survival. And the good news, once you treat the root cause, whether it's blood flow hormone imbalance or stress, things often improve. I've had men in their 70s tell me they feel like they're 45 again. Not because of magic, because they listened to their body and acted before it was too late. But now I want to tell you something even more personal. Because while the heart affects the body, there's another layer, no one talks about a layer, that lives in your emotions, your memory, your sense of touch. It's the part of intimacy that's never taught in medical school, but it's often the most healing. And without it, see-through becomes empty, disconnected, and even painful. In the next secret, we're going to talk about the emotional power of see-through after 60 and how the absence of that connection might be quietly damaging your health more than you think. Don't go anywhere. This next one, it might hit closer to home than you expect. Secret 3, see-through isn't just physical, it's emotional. Secret 3, medicine. I want you to think back to a time when you felt deeply connected to someone. Not just physically, but emotionally. When their touch made you feel seen, understood, alive. For many men, those moments are rare and even rarer as we age. But the truth is, intimacy after 60 isn't just about your body. It's about your heart, your mind, your spirit. And when that emotional connection disappears, the cost is far greater than just a lack of pleasure. I've sat across from men in their 70s, strong men who ran businesses, raised families, built legacies, yet their voices trembled when they said, I haven't felt close to anyone in years, not just see-through. Emotionally, they weren't starving for see-through. They were starving for closeness, for human warmth, for someone to touch their hand and mean it. That longing, when left unmet, slowly erodes a man's mental and physical health in ways most doctors never mention. One patient, Martin, 74, came to see me, not because he was struggling physically, but because he felt numb. His wife had passed 5 years earlier. Since then, he'd kept to himself, convinced that intimacy no longer belonged in his life. He told me, what's the point at this age? But I could see it in his eyes. He missed the connection, the laughter, the touch. And over time, that emotional distance had grown into depression, insomnia, and a rising blood pressure that no medication seemed to help. What Martin didn't know, and what most older men never hear, is that intimacy is a form of emotional medicine. Physical affection, whether with a partner or through self-touch, releases oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. These aren't just feel-good chemicals. They regulate your mood, reduce stress, improve sleep support, immune function, and lower your risk of heart disease. In short, when you lose intimacy, you lose a powerful part of your health. And yet so many men push it away. They convince themselves that connection is for the young, that expressing need is weakness, that vulnerability is something to hide. So instead of reaching out, they shut down. They avoid physical closeness, even when it's offered. They suppress their feelings. They go silent. But here's what that silence costs them: increased risk of depression, higher cortisol levels, weaker immune response, elevated blood pressure, and, in many cases, an early decline in brain function due to chronic emotional isolation. Yes, I've seen men age 10 years and half the time simply because they had no one to hold, no one to talk to at night, no one to share their body or their soul with. They lived long enough to survive, but not well enough to feel alive. And this isn't just about being in a relationship. Some men are in marriages but haven't truly connected with their spouse in decades. Others live alone but have rich emotional lives through friendship, conversation, and self-acceptance. The point is, emotional intimacy is just as essential as physical health. Without it, you are running on empty. Now, I want to say something that may be hard to hear. If you've been feeling disconnected, if you've lost interest in touch, if you've told yourself that affection doesn't matter anymore, you may be slowly slipping into emotional starvation, and it's costing you far more than you realize, but it's not too late. Reaching for a connection, even if it feels foreign or scary, is one of the most powerful health decisions you can make in your later years. Whether it's through open conversation with your spouse, allowing yourself to feel during moments of touch, or simply acknowledging your need for closeness. It begins with one act of courage, one decision to stop surviving and start living again. And if you're wondering whether that kind of connection can still bring you pleasure, peace, and vitality after all these years, let me tell you from experience, it absolutely can. In fact, the most meaningful intimacy often comes after youth has passed, when masks fall away and what's left is real vulnerable human love. But there's one obstacle that continues to rob men of that joy, silently, relentlessly. It's not aging, it's not illness, it's something we carry in our pocket, something we watch when no one's around, and it's rewiring your brain, your expectations, and your ability to feel. And in the next secret, I'll show you why the thing many men turn to for escape could be the very thing destroying their confidence, their satisfaction, and their chance at real intimacy. You're going to want to hear this. Secret for porn and unrealistic secret for. Expectations are quietly killing senior confidence. There's something few men ever talk about, but nearly all of them experience. It's what they turn to when they're lonely, curious, or simply trying to feel something again. It's fast, it's private, and it's easy. I'm talking about pornography. And while it might seem harmless, especially in old age, it's one of the most powerful, silent destroyers of male confidence and intimacy I've ever seen. In my 30 years of working with men, I've witnessed a heartbreaking pattern. As physical changes begin to show slower arousal, longer recovery time, occasional performance issues, many men quietly retreat into fantasy. They stop trying with their partners. They stop asking for affection. Instead, they sit alone with a screen, convincing themselves it's normal, even necessary. But what they don't realize is that what they're watching is reshaping how they think, how they feel, and what they expect from themselves and others. I remember a man named Walter. He was 71, retired Navy proud strong, but something had shifted. He told me he hadn't touched his wife in almost 4 years. He said they just drifted apart, but the truth came out slowly. Walter had developed a habit of watching adult content almost daily. What started as an occasional escape became a replacement for real intimacy. And over time, he began comparing what he saw on screen to what he experienced at home. His wife's body, her pace, her sounds, they no longer excited him. He grew bored, then resentful, then silent. Eventually, she stopped reaching for him at all. This is the quiet cost of porn at an older age. It's not just what you see, it's what you stop feeling. Your brain gets used to artificial stimulation, unrealistic bodies, endless novelty, no emotion, no imperfection, and soon reality just doesn't measure up. That warm, imperfect human connection, you once treasured it, starts to feel dull, even irritating. Your body follows, dopamine pathways begin to shift. It becomes harder to get aroused by touch alone. Some men find they can't climax without a screen in front of them. Others report delayed orgasm, erectile dysfunction, or loss of interest altogether. And perhaps the most damaging of all is what happens inside, the silent erosion of confidence, connection, and self-worth. Because no matter how much you watch, you're still left with that empty space afterward. That quiet moment where you wonder why you don't feel satisfied, where you ask yourself, what's wrong with me? You start to think you've changed that. Maybe it's just age, but deep down, you know it's not age. It's the fact that you've been feeding your brain something fake for so long, it's forgotten how to respond to what's real. And that's terrifying. I've seen marriages fall apart, not because of infidelity or illness, but because of years of digital disconnection. I've seen men grow distant from their own bodies, no longer trusting themselves to be present without stimulation. I've watched men spiral into guilt, shame, and secrecy, thinking they're alone, thinking no one else struggles like this, but you're not alone, and there is a way back. It starts with understanding that what you consume, especially in isolation, doesn't just affect your arousal. It rewires your expectations. It teaches your mind to demand constant novelty, frictionless excitement, and zero emotional effort. But real intimacy is none of those things. Real intimacy is patient, it's messy, it's emotional, it's grounded in trust, conversation, and presence. And yes, it may feel slower than the instant gratification of a video, but it's deeper, more lasting, more human, and far more fulfilling. Letting go of porn, especially if it's been a habit for years, isn't easy. It requires honesty, support, and sometimes professional guidance, but what's waiting on the other side is worth it. A renewed sense of self, a deeper bond with your partner, a return to natural arousal that doesn't leave you empty afterward, and perhaps most importantly, a reclaimed confidence, the kind that isn't tied to performance or fantasy, but to presence and connection. If you've been living in that quiet disconnect, I urge you to pause, to ask yourself, am I still capable of feeling something real? The answer, I assure you, is yes, but you must choose it again and again. Now, while this emotional rewiring can do damage over time, there's one more secret that can destroy everything instantly. If you're not careful, it's not about what you watch. It's about what you do. A dangerous timing mistake that many men make when trying to prove they've still got it. A single misstep that has cost men their relationships, their dignity, and in the worst cases, their lives. And that's exactly what I'll reveal in the final secret. Don't miss it. Secret 5. The secret 5 most dangerous time to have see-through is when you feel proved right. There's a moment that sneaks up on many older men, a moment when they feel bold, energized, even invincible. Maybe it's after a good doctor's visit, or when an old friend makes a comment like, "You've still got it." New romantic interest stirs something inside that hasn't been awakened in years, and in that moment something dangerous happens. They feel the need to prove it to themselves, to their partner, or maybe just to time itself. They want to show the world they've still got what it takes. They want to have see-through like they did at 30, no planning, no pacing, no boundaries. And that's when the damage is done. I've seen it over and over again. Men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s who push themselves too far too fast, all in the name of pride. They drink a little too much wine, skip their heart medication, take an over-the-counter enhancement pill, and step into the bedroom like it's a performance. But inside, their heart is working overtime. Their blood pressure is spiking, their breathing is shallow, and their body, which needed care and preparation, is being forced into a moment. It's not ready for. One man I'll never forget was Leonard, 74. He was charming, funny, and had recently started dating a younger woman. He came to me once and joked, "Doc, I've got to keep up." I warned him, told him his heart wasn't as strong as it once was, that seethal is exercise, not just pleasure. He nodded, smiled, and said, "Don't worry, I know my limits." 2 weeks later, Leonard collapsed in a hotel room. Cardiac arrest, his date panicked and called for help. But by the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. His body couldn't handle the pressure of that night, not because he wasn't a man, but because he forgot that aging requires respect, not resistance. And the truth is, when older men try to prove they're still young without caution or care, the price can be fatal. Seethal, especially in later life, is not just about arousal, it's a full-body event. Your heart rate rises, your blood vessels expand, your breathing deepens. It's like climbing a hill physically. And if your heart isn't prepared, if your body is under strain, that hill becomes a cliff. I've spoken to widows who said their husbands died doing what they loved. But behind the smiles and the stories is a much deeper pain, because those deaths weren't peaceful, they were preventable. The mistake isn't in desiring intimacy, it's in ignoring your body's needs. It's in letting your ego speak louder than your experience. It's in treating your partner like an audience instead of a companion. When seethal becomes a performance instead of a shared connection, it stops being intimacy and starts being a risk. The fear older men carry that they're no longer desirable, no longer strong, no longer capable, can push them into decisions that cost them far more than their pride. And that's the tragedy, because the truth is, you don't need to prove anything. You've lived, loved, and endured more than most. Your worth is not measured by how hard or how fast or how long. It's measured by presence, honesty, and the ability to listen to your partner and to your own body. Slowing down isn't giving up. It's staying alive. Pacing yourself isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The most powerful thing a man can do in his later years is not to fight aging, but to embrace it with strength, clarity, and care. If you feel the urge to prove yourself in the bedroom, take a breath. Ask yourself, why? Ask yourself if it's about connection or control, if it's about love or fear. Because in that moment, what you choose matters. You can choose pressure and suffer the consequences, or you can choose presence and create something far more lasting than a performance. And if that scares you good, it should. Because this isn't just about seethal, it's about staying alive long enough to enjoy the years ahead. It's about not becoming another silent statistic. Now that you know the 5 secrets, what they are, what they cost, and how they quietly steal years of joy from men who don't know them, there's one final thing I need to share. Something that brings all of this together. Because learning is one thing, but living differently, that's where the real change happens. And in the conclusion, I'll give you the one message that could tie all of this into a new beginning. You won't want to miss it. Conclusion. What you know. Conclusion now can save you. By now, you've heard the 5 truths that so many older men wish they had learned sooner. These aren't just tips or tricks. They're turning points. Quiet, often overlooked moments of wisdom that separate the men who age with strength, love and vitality from those who slowly disconnect from their partners, from their health, and most painfully, from themselves. If there's one thing I've learned over the years as a doctor, it's that the hardest part of aging isn't the physical decline, it's the emotional toll of feeling invisible, uncertain, or afraid to speak up. Too many men walk into my office thinking they're alone in their struggle. They believe what they're going through is embarrassing, unusual, or somehow their fault. But the truth is, your body isn't betraying you, it's just changing. And like any change in life, it requires understanding, not shame. Let's take a breath and reflect on what we've uncovered. First, we talked. Should still just happen, like it did at 25. But after 60, that mindset sets men up for failure, frustration, and sometimes dangerous outcomes. Planning is not weakness, it's wisdom. Intimacy becomes more meaningful when it's intentional. Then came the second secret, the one too many men ignore until it's too late. Your erection is a window into your heart. If blood isn't flowing where it used to, it may not be flowing to your heart or brain either. That warning sign could save your life if you choose to listen. The third truth took us deeper. Intimacy isn't just about the body, it's emotional medicine. It heals, it grounds, it connects. And when men cut themselves off from that emotional layer, whether out of grief, guilt, or pride, they begin to wither. Not because they're old, but because they're alone in a way that breaks the soul. Then we address the fourth danger, pornography and the distortion of real connection. It starts quietly as a substitute for closeness, but over time it rewires how you feel, how you love, and how you see yourself. It's not just a habit, it's a habit that can rob you of your ability to be present, to be real, and to be fulfilled. And finally, the last secret. The most dangerous moment for an older man isn't when he feels weak. It's when he tries to prove he's still young, pushing his body past its limit for the sake of ego, for the illusion of youth. That single choice has cost men their health, their relationships, and in some cases their lives. But it's avoidable if you're willing to choose presence over pride. Now maybe you saw yourself in one of these stories. Maybe you've been struggling in silence, too ashamed or too afraid to speak up. Maybe you've been telling yourself that these changes are just the way things go, and there's nothing you can do about it. But that's where you're wrong, because knowing these secrets put you in a new position, not just to understand your body and your intimacy, but to reclaim control over both, to reconnect, to rebuild, to rewrite what these years look like, not as a slow decline, but as a conscious, powerful chapter of your life. You don't need to settle for silence. You don't need to disappear into the background of your own story. You're still here, and your presence, your heart, your intimacy, they still matter. In fact, they may matter now more than ever. So here's what I'll leave you with. If anything you've heard today stirred something in you, if it made you reflect, made you uncomfortable, or made you hope, don't walk away unchanged. Talk to your partner, talk to your doctor, make that appointment, open that conversation. And most of all, stop believing the lie that this part of your life is behind you. It isn't. There is still so much more waiting for you. More connection, more pleasure, more healing, more love. But it starts with the choice to stop surviving and start living again. And if you're still with me, still listening, still open, I thank you. Because the men who change their lives are the ones who first find the courage to listen. You've just taken the first step. Now, take the next one. If this message spoke to you, if even one part of it made you pause, reflect, or feel seen, I'd be honored if you'd let me know. Type the number 1 in the comments so I know you're still here, still listening, and still choosing to grow. And if you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe and tap the bell icon. I share honest, real conversations like this, just for men like you. Because you deserve more than silence. You deserve the truth and the tools to live your best years with strength, wisdom, and heart.